Hello, my name is Cameron. I will explain to you today the prevalence of global positioning systems and satellites, or GPS, from a basic local coordinates and azimuth-based surveying technique that was used many times ago. The advent of GPS and things like GLONASS and Galileo from other countries has changed the face and will continue to change the face of surveying. Now, the prevalent way of surveying before these systems was to use astronomy as a main focal point of their surveying techniques. Things like locating stars in the sky and using the sun even to locate azimuths that can calculate the latitude and longitude of where you're going, where you've been, and where you need to go. These things were also used very prevalent in the surveying world from ancient Egypt to now. These techniques were very accurate for what they needed to be and where they needed to be. One of the main ways to locate yourself on the northern hemisphere is to locate Polaris and do a Polaris observation, in which you take a multitude of observations on Polaris and find an azimuth baseline to locate where you are in the world. Now, in quote of Surveyor Reference Manual by Cole Copeland, the Polaris star is one of the few northern-centric stars that can be seen at all times from the northern hemisphere, therefore making it one of the easiest observable stars for surveying. Now, that technique is great, but as you know, there is a whole other part of the world called the southern hemisphere. The southern hemisphere relies on other stars, other techniques, using such things as using a standard set azimuths by Polaris and other stars and astrological and things like that to locate towers and railroads, and use these things to funnel in a more succinct area of where you are. These survey techniques were then used to cut out property, to locate monuments, to navigate around the country as a whole. Very many surveyors used this for a long time. Once that became a standard set, people needed more and more accurate things to locate more and more property and design more tightly fitted accuracies. One of the main things to happen within the last century is that we started launching things into space. The advent of launching things into space led to launching satellites into space. Well, when we started launching satellites into space, we realized that we could start to use those satellites to locate ourselves on the Earth. And the launch and use of GPS was then started. GPS changed a lot. GPS started to change how we saw the Earth. Before, countries would map out, using these previous techniques, to map out their area of the planet. Say Australia would map out Australia and would come up with the Australian datum of their world, and they would create a world based on what they had found or what they observed. And this world would be accurate for where they were, but not for the rest of the world. They would shift all the error to the other end of the planet. And because these techniques were as inaccurate as they were, the need of a more global system of accuracy came about. As the world became more intrinsic with each other, they needed to rely on the same kind of accuracies in China that they needed to in Europe. GPS started to solve that problem by the changes in which GPS found that the Earth is not such a sphere as we thought it was. It is more of a foil shape that has been crumpled up. A geoid model thus came into existence. The quote from GPS for Land Surveyors by John Van Sickle says that the prevalence of a GPS system thus created a need for a more geocentrical based datum. In essence, saying that the more and more accuracies we were developing, the more and more we needed to create a more center of the earth or geocentric style system of data needed to happen. Now, once all of this happened, this became a more prevalent use of a tool. GPS is now widely used among many different aspects of technology, from nurses using it to find people in Cambodia that they need to help, to cruise missiles launching across the sea, to your phone telling you what part of the street you're on. Surveyors use it predominantly to locate where they are on the ground. They need it to shoot in items. They need to know what they're doing. And these GPS solutions have made surveying much quicker, much more accurate, and much cheaper. And it will continue to make surveying, as the prevalence of GPS decreases in cost and more accurate, it will make it cheaper, faster, and easier to use. Therefore, we will always rely on GPS in the future. Thank you.